let's move on to our next team preview for this episode, which is going to be the Memphis Grizzlies, another team, Brendon, going through some stuff, another team figuring some stuff out. And I want to start with the most important player because I think this is the easiest answer I've maybe had this whole entire exercise. Except maybe when I picked Max Strus for Cleveland. That was just a real, I'm two in my head on that one. Most important player is Jaren Jackson Jr.
Okay.
There's a lot, there is going to be a lot for him to do in the first 25 games of the season Jaren is out to perhaps fill in on offense there, grow on that end of the floor, and take another step up. Can he absorb more of a scoring role, a creator role, some kind of offensive role, and still maintain that high level of defense, and maybe even foul a little bit less? Can we ask just for a few less fouls, Jaren? Can he be more of a two-way monster and grow and take some of the pressure off of everyone else on this team to be creative, to be scoring? Can he give them another layer on offense? Can he take a step forward as a player that gets him into more solid all-star status? And really, I think, fills in and kind of helps this team tread water, be above treading water, however you want to phrase it, while Ja Morant is suspended.
I don't know. I picked Desmond Bane, and I think it's an interesting conversation because it was a similar reasoning as far as who is going to be relied upon to take more of an offensive leap. I still don't necessarily see the full shape of how you give an offense more over to Jaren Jackson Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are the ways that you can use him that you haven't already that allow him to kind of fill some of the void that's left with Ja Morant not running 100 pick and rolls a night and running down the defense's throat in transition and everything else. Like, obviously, Jaren will probably take more shots, like if you just kind of want to break it down that way. His usage in the playoffs last year was about the same as it was in the regular season. I do think he showed at times in some of those playoff games a little bit more in the way of offense, especially in that game one, but I believe Ja played in that game. So, yeah, I don't know what it looks like for him, I guess, is kind of where I'm at from an offensive standpoint for Jaren. And he's the reigning defensive player of the year. So I think he will take a step forward. I'm just curious, like, what does that mean and how much do they trust him to really, like, is he initiating? Is he isolating, breaking guys down in face up? Is he running in transition? Is he, I don't know.
So the reason I think I picked him is because I think we're going to learn something. I think this was an easy pick for me because we're going to learn something about him and about what he can be during this stretch. Bane, I think, like, it's much clearer to project kind of what this might look like. I don't think that's a particularly complicated exercise. I think it's important to see maybe what his ceiling is going to be, but it's more linear. It's more easy to map. Jackson is not. And I as good as he is on defense, I think we're still figuring out what he is on offense. So I went with him just because I want to learn here. I want to figure some stuff out with Jaren Jackson over the stretch.
So Desmond Bane, I agree. It is more linear. It is more clear. He took a big leap in terms of his playmaking last year. He continued to hit threes at a really high level, just sort of added to his game without subtracting, which I think is pretty impressive. He's one of those guys, Chris, you maybe watch him and you think one thing, and then you look at his stats and you're like, it's kind of hard to poke a hole in his game. I think the one hole you would poke is that he's a little undersized. And
yes,
what is the diet of scoring and creating when getting to the basket is not really in the cards for you at the highest of high levels? Is what we're going to see, I guess, in some of the first few games, because last year he had a career high 30% rim frequency. I don't know really if it's going to get much higher than that over the course of his career, and he only finished 62% of those shots. In terms of his foul drawing, it went up, but again, don't think that's going to be a core part of what he does for you. So are you talking about kind of a better passing Clay, or what is a more physically capable JJ Redick, like what's the path? And I think in terms of big picture, it also matters. It's not just about when Ja's out, right? Because I don't think they have enough half-court offense even when Ja is healthy. I think that's actually an interesting conversation because I think we've kind of also forgotten how great they were at various points in the playoffs and how wide open them winning a title actually has been a couple times. But even with Ja back by April, with 60 games under his belt, let's assume he stays healthy, who fills the offensive void is still going to be a question, even when Ja gets back.
Right.
And so that's also part of it.
I guess how much meat do you feel like is on the bone for him?
For Bane?
Yeah. Considering the size.
I struggle to see it, personally. Like, I'm not making the case that he is the most important because it will happen. But I also am a little bit interested because we're also not just, this is not the first, they dealt with being without Ja last year, right? So it's like, part of it is we're pulling from what we've already learned and then extrapolating to who continues it or how things continue to change. He did take a leap last year, again, with the assist.
Yes.
So part of me is also just, what does it look like if they can maximize both of those guys? If Jaren, to your point, is doing some things that he wasn't, especially driving to the basket, attacking closeouts, playing center and taking advantage of that space, some of the things we started to see him do, and Ja's at his peak. Is that enough for their offense in the half court, especially to win a title? And I think the answer could be yes. This is what I was thinking about as I went to sign away my vehicle to be towed 40 miles from my house today, Chris, was could they have won the championship either of the past two seasons? 2022, Ja goes down in the Warriors series. A lot of Warriors or Grizzlies fans will tell you that they were right there. And if Ja didn't get hurt, they would have really pushed Golden State. I think you could make a pretty decent case. I believe they won one of the games and were close in the other one with Ja healthy. If I have it right that he played two of those games. And then last year, it's just chaos and things kind of fell apart, but they still took the Lakers to, I believe, 6. So you could look at that and say that they really had a shot at a championship 2 straight seasons, even with their limitations, and their young guys have gotten better. Where I came down is I just think they match up pretty poorly with the Nuggets. That was honestly where I landed with it.
Yeah, and I think I think if you look at how they match up like this season, when everyone's back and you're looking at how things are projected for them, gotta be a little tricky just because of the size. I mean, even with Marcus, if it's Bane and Ja out there and you're playing Phoenix, if you're playing the Lakers with LeBron, if you're playing the Warriors, even if that's a little bit different, like I think they have there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of stuff to figure out on that end of the floor with those guards. So and they don't even have like a Dylan, like, and Marcus is Marcus, but Dylan Brooks was bigger, and like there is something to be different. It's going to look differently even if it works.
Yeah, the combination of Brooks flaming out in more ways than one and the Ja suspension, I think, forced their hand into an imperfect trade for Smart. Considering we know they looked at Anunoby and Bridges at the deadline, and they settled for Marcus Smart. That is not a home run trade, so it's not as if that is fully a solution to their problems. Who did you have for the player we're going to be talking about by the end of the season?
I went David Roddy. They've tried him at the 5th season as a 5th starter in the preseason so far. I just like what he is. If he can shoot it, that's a rock-solid rotation guy, and he's a big body. I mean, he's literally big body Roddy. I think that is just like a frame of a guy, of someone I could see them really needing this year, just to be a big wing, even if he's still learning and growing. I think they have a lot. I think the beauty, Brendon, of this team, though, and the beauty of what this front office has built, to Zach Kleiman's credit, is I think they have like 3 or 4 guys that this could be, and it wouldn't really be a surprise. They've put a bunch of options on the table for themselves for someone to be a good answer to this question, and not just that's the obligatory answer at the end of the year. I went Roddy just because I like what Roddy is and what he could be. I like the frame, but I think there's other good options here.
2 things worry me about him, and I'm definitely not ready to panic after one season. First round pick for a reason. Excited to see it. LeBron just obliterated him.
Yes.
And he's only 6'4". So
yes. He's got like a tight end build.
Yeah. So feels like a little bit of a Bane 2.0, not as skilled, of course, as an offensive player, but it's like, what is that guy in a team that already has, tiny Ja Morant and Desmond Bane? His strength is going to have to be his differentiator, and of course, measuring him against LeBron James is pretty unfair as a rookie. Like, I'm not going to overreact to that, but it sucked for him to have to get shoved into that, and I don't want to overreact, but those 2 things worry me. Now, my pick, definitely not any more proven. And that's the other part of this is like, there are 4 or 5 guys, but there's also no one guy that you feel great about. So it's like a good and a bad. So I went Zaire Williams, who I know we've talked about
this was
a lot.
my number 2. This was my number 2. He has done some stuff in preseason, Brendon, that has made me perk my eyes up a little bit with him.
He's one of these guys that I think is really almost impossible to evaluate if we're just being honest. Like, he just hasn't played a lot in the league. He is the type of player that dominated in college. He kind of reminds me of like what we're in for in terms of this draft cycle with Jaden, what is his name? Cody Williams, Jalen Williams' brother at Colorado this year, who's like a guy who is a 5-star recruit, got a lot of attention, but you start to watch him and you're like, no, he's actually not going to be like Andrew Wiggins or Kevin Durant or something. Like, he's not actually a scorer. And I think Zaire Williams went to Stanford way back when, and that was the bill on him. Oh, he's, the next 5-star wing scorer. He's going to be Brandon Ingram. He's going to be Jabari Parker. He's going to be Jason Tatum. No, he's not that at all. But that doesn't mean he can't evolve into a 3-and-D player. And so I just like him being how big he is, having somewhat of a track record of making threes. He made, 32% 2 years ago in 1,300 minutes. That's not any sort of elite number to write home about, but that's a solid starting point. And considering that not even just Roddy and Bane and Ja and Rose and Smart are relatively undersized, but you also have Luke Kennard, who's undersized on this team. You have Santi Aldama, who's not really like a forceful athletic guy. John Conchar. Jake LaRavia, I thought about picking here actually, because I think physically, once he clicks, he's going to be able to play. He just, like, I saw him very close one time last season when he was doing stretching and warm-ups and stuff. And I'm like, you have like a teenager body, brother. Like, you're a long way away, like we all know what that's like. I'm not 6'5". I'm not a professional athlete, but I know what doughy is. And that man was doughy. So, but I think once he clicks, he could play, and he's pretty big. So I just like that Zaire feels the most ready to fill something that they need. And that's really it. I don't know if he's going to be some sort of game changer, but let's just say he could become a rotation player, 3-and-D guy with size and length. Like, every team needs that.
Yeah, if he pops, that's like the one. And this is the spot on the floor they've been searching for. Right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, this has been their troublesome spot, and he has had some stops and starts. It's tricky. I also just feel like, Brendon, this could be the answer we're looking at here is just like a trade they make at some point. And like the guy we talk about is just like, hey, they consolidated a couple of these guys and like a pick or two and went and got someone to fill the spot.
It also could just be Steven Adams, frankly, and being like, oh yeah, like he's a difference maker. And
that guy's how much Brendon for you to get screened by Steven Adams full go? How much money would you need?
I think I would pass out.
See, like I kind of want to experience it, so I just need just take me out to dinner after, and I'll take
the other part of it though. That's funny with screening though is like I'm not sure I could actually get up to the level of speed to hurt myself enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
but I think
NBA athletes are at a full sprint and then they get smashed by his body. I don't even think I could get to moving fast enough to be like a Mikal Bridges trying to fight through a screen and get clobbered, I would just be at like a light jog and probably just kind of bounce off. And I don't know if it would even hurt because the momentum, the physics of it would just be like letting me off the hook.
I just think I think there's something in his screening that is like throwing another layer at this.
It's not like a still thing. It's actually like force in the other direction somehow.
It has to be. I just moving screen, like guys make contact on screens. Like as a bad basketball player, like growing up, like I would do stuff on screens because I needed to leverage myself somehow.
So you think Steven Adams is a bad basketball player?
No.
I think that's what you said.
I do not. Yeah, you cut that out. Coming at me. All right, best lineup. Obviously, I put John Moran in this conversation because I think you have to. So I went. In speaking of Steven Adams, I went Josh, Smart, and Bane, Triple J, and Adams. I just think like that's the 5 guys I kind of trust right now. I don't love any of my other options to put Triple J at the 5 right now, with just kind of the uncertainty around some of those guys right now. And I think you have to put the 3 guards, those 3 dudes, even though Marcus is kind of going to defend threes and do all this other stuff. I think that has to be the 5 on paper. If you're assuming Josh back and assuming that none of these guys really pops in a way that changes the equation and allows you to put Triple J at the 5. Or because there's not even like a Brandon Clark here if you wanted to make that case because he's obviously out.
Just casually deciding to have surgery. Yeah, you know who else doesn't like any of the combos he has to play Jaren at the 5? Steve
Taylor
Kerr.
Jenkins. Yeah, that's true.
Steve Kerr didn't really like any of those combos, I don't think. And he said, "Hey, Joe,
just in retrospect,
how do you
feel
about spending next summer in Paris with us?" And Joel Embiid was like, "Okay." Does it surprise me that Jaren performed poorly in FIBA? No. I wasn't being sarcastic. I just wanted to make sure I had your question right so I can answer it.
that Kerr didn't like love playing him at the 5 because I kind of thought he might.
No, I think Kerr did play him at the 5 plenty. I just don't think he liked it. That's what I'm saying. He didn't like it on the back end because it sucked, not because he didn't want to do it. That's what I mean.
Let me get the center that let me get the center. Yeah. Let me get the center I'll never be able to coach.
Exactly. I think it has to be this. Even looking back through last year, there's really no Jackson at the 5 lineup that really played, period. And then especially that succeeded. We can look at the playoffs, which, of course, he was forced into action there, and they had no positive lineups. So there's no track record of it. So I think it has to be what you said. If that lineup doesn't work for them, they're in trouble. I mean, that's their 5 best players by a mile. So I don't think it's super debatable. I guess without Ja in, first portion of the season, you could probably have some debate. I would lean probably bigger with Smart as more of like the 1 and then another wing in place of Ja instead of like Kennard or something. So again, probably I would just pick Zaire Williams. But yeah, I mean, Ja is such a big force in terms of off-on and everything revolves around him. So over the course of the season, I think it's the starters.
Do you think they'll miss Tyus Jones?
They'll probably miss Tyus Jones in terms of making the role players better. Like I think that's what kind of high floor point guards tend to do more so than like breaking stuff open with the ceiling of a team. They really loved more than I think we all realized to play. Like they got good stuff out of playing Ja and Tyus together. And I think that's something that gets lost. You probably would just hope that Bane's playmaking leap alleviates some of that, and Bane can just kind of be that secondary creator now in a way that he wasn't 2 years ago. So yes, I think they'll miss him, but best backup point guard in the league, like that's a valuable asset to have, but that guy doesn't play in the playoffs if your best player is also a point guard.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He would have been like probably more useful than Derrick Rose. No disrespect to Derrick Rose, but like that would have been like a better 25 game bridge gap. But you go in this other direction, I get why you do it, all that stuff. All right, best case. Brendon, I would make a conference finals run once Ja's back and they finally level themselves up in some way, hitting some promise that hasn't fully been realized yet.
Question. Do you have them in the same tier as the Lakers and Warriors behind the Nuggets and Suns right now? or a tier below that?
I have them
In terms of like title upside, championship upside.
Lower.
I think I have them in the same tier. So
I think I have them at the same I wouldn't be surprised if they are as like similar regular season teams, but I feel better about the other two in terms of like navigating the whole playoff thing. And that some of that is just because like we've seen those teams do it. And there's stuff with this team is going to have to look a little bit different this year. Where like I can kind of project the other teams, and I think there's some projection here and stuff I want to see before I feel more confident in that.
Yeah, they've been competitive in the second round. So I'll say that they're in the same tier as the Lakers and Warriors, and if I think that, then I have to say the same thing about the Memphis Grizzlies as I do about those teams, which is they can make the finals. And if you can make the finals, you can win the finals. So I guess best case for me with them is they can win a championship. I still think that. I mean, there's drama, there's off the court stuff that we didn't get into because it's immeasurable and who knows. But if they can avoid all of that stuff this year and that gets cleaned up, I think as a basketball team, they have the upside to still win a championship potentially. A lot of stuff has to break right. I'm not saying they will do that, but I think they could.
I just also would say, like, when I think about them getting past the conference finals, I just don't like how they match up with the teams they're going to have to play in that spot. That's part of my calculus here.
I think they match up pretty well with everybody except for the Nuggets.
I don't think they match up well with Phoenix.
No.
Phoenix has
they're going to get
the center. Yeah, the center stuff is what it is. The guards are just like Booker, Beal, and Durant as guys to attack their guards. Marcus can only be in one spot.
Yeah, that's like the one-on-one matchups. I guess I just worry about the Suns would demand that Memphis brings a level of half-court offense that we've never seen them bring.
Bingo.
So.
Bingo.
They're probably similar to Denver in that way, but they also have a worse defense. So I think the Suns have the worst defense than the Nuggets, as crazy as that sounds. So at least right now. Yeah, they probably don't match up great with either one. I think they're pretty even with the Warriors and Lakers, even though both of those teams also play small. We've seen them be competitive with both of those teams in the postseason. I kind of trust that, but maybe those other two are a little bit out of reach right now.
And the Lakers are going to be able to go big this year in a way I think they're going to have some lineups that are just like huge.
You're a Christian Wood guy?
No. Well, this Giannis
Jackson Hayes
tagging thing? Well, I was more thinking like Reeves. Who's the guy they got from Miami before I say the wrong one? Gabe
Vincent, but that's
Martin.
Not exactly going big.
Okay, but like him at the one, Reeves, LeBron, Rui, or like take out Vincent and put in Taurean Prince, and it's like you have just like a bunch.
I don't think that's bigger than Memphis. But AD is just a behemoth who you have to account for, and we talked about LeBron just destroying the Grizzlies last place. I think it's those two. But I think the role players are pretty equivalent.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. All right, worst case. The defense, I think at the point of attack, just isn't great enough against guards, just with their size issues right now. Smart just doesn't live up to what I think they're asking him to be, which we didn't really talk about a lot, but I think they're asking him to kind of be like a heartbeat of this team and the leader on this team in a lot of ways. The half-court offense doesn't progress, and they just kind of stall out somewhere in the playoffs again. I don't know if that's first round, I don't know if that's second round, but if this just kind of feels stuck this year, it wouldn't shock me. That's the worst case to me, is it just kind of gets stuck again, and you're just like, okay, what is this exactly?
Yeah, I think a version of that I was thinking, and I don't want to be too like galaxy brained about it, but I think a pretty bad outcome for them this year would just be to realize that they really need Steven Adams. To your point about Jaren, if it's another year where it's like when he's off the court, things feel really uneasy and they need him out there, you're probably limited as far as how good you can be if a player like that has to be on the court for you in the modern NBA. So if it's a season where he's too important, I think that's kind of a version of the worst case. And I think it speaks to the kind of fizzling out that you're talking about. So that's probably what I would say. And there's plenty of other little player parts of that too. But I don't think they're going to trade anybody. I don't think they're going to blow this team up. I don't think they're going to fire a bunch of people. But the basketball fit seeming questionable would be pretty tough because they don't have a ton to trade to upgrade anymore. You know, a lot of these young guys didn't hit, so they're not really blue chippers. It's like, what are you trading? Theoretical Zaire Williams, some bad first round picks, and like Luke Kennard's salary. Like,
it's all of the pick. It's all of the picks. Like, it has to just be every pick
but
you
they
can
got
do.
rid
And
of
then
some
what are you
for,
getting out of that?
For Smart, right? One of their own. And the Warriors.
It's like, what are you getting? You know, I think is the question. Like, what are you targeting? Like, are you even able to get OG?
No,
you know,
I don't
like OG
think so.
would make. I don't think they have enough. And like, is like, are you gonna be the team that like talks themselves into like Jeremy Grant? I don't know if I want to be in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Over under?
Tough. Over unders at 45.5.
Mm-hmm.
I would stay away just based on Ja missing 25 games is my first instinct. That's like my first just like that's just a big chunk of the season. That is over a quarter of the NBA season that is just gone. I still think I just lean over.
They were statistically a 53-win team last year, and Ja did miss time.
Sometime. Yeah.
As did Jaren at the beginning of the season. This team is never healthy, so you can't even necessarily say that they like really have hit their ceiling. Ja played 61 games last year. That's kind of a good year for him, even with all the suspension crap and everything. Bane played 58 and Jaren played 63. So, you know, and then obviously Steven Adams missed half the year plus the postseason. So they won 53 even with all that, or they statistically were a 53-win team. They actually won 51. I'm going to go under because I think that this team is probably going to be like what the Warriors and Lakers were last year, where they hover around 6, 7, 8, but we know they're better than that, and then you don't want to play them in the first round. I think that's what this Grizzlies season is going to be. Not everybody can win a million games, so I think I went over on Denver, Phoenix, Golden State, and LA. I can't keep going over on every single Western Conference team, so I think this one will be a little under. They'll probably have to worry about the play-in, but I do think they'll probably make the real playoffs and be a nightmare for a good team in the first round. That's what I think will happen this year.
We're gonna get like a banger 3-6 in the West.
Kind of feels like we always do.
But I think I think the way the talent Brendon is going in the league, and I think this is the case in both conferences, but it's gonna feel more so in the West this year, just based on some of the East stuff. I think we're just gonna get like banger after banger after banger first round series